I always try to balance the concern when there are points scored, but they're not meaningful points by the opposition. So we had a 35-3 game. There were no meaningful touchdowns scored, but 27 points on the board by Rutgers at the same time.
Yeah, it was 42-9 at the end of the third, and then Rutgers scores a bunch of points against backups and pulling out all kinds of trick plays. And so I can't get too worked up about it when I believe the true Ohio State defense is more of the first half Ohio State defense than the second half Ohio State defense, again in this game and against Penn State, against Nebraska as well. Like what they did in the first half is more representative of what happened in the second half. That being said, there is a concern of just letting off the gas. And I still go back to the fact that that's also on the coaches. That's not just the players doing that. That's the coaches letting up. Ryan Day running the ball on 3rd and 8 in the first quarter, I think, and then punting from the Rutgers 39 kind of sends a signal. Talking all week about, hey, we're going to get some backups in, get ready for the backup quarterbacks to play. That sends a signal. After the game, I asked Justin Fields, did you expect to play this much? No, he said. And so, like, they were just – it's Rutgers. How do you not go into this game knowing it's Rutgers and you expect it to be easy? And it was kind of junky last year as well. And it's because you go in knowing that you don't have to do much. And then when you do enough, then you're done. And they were done, and Rutgers wasn't. And I give all the credit to Greg Schiano. We saw a program-defining loss for Jim Harbaugh against Michigan State. This is kind of a program-defining loss for Rutgers in a much different way, and that I give them all the credit. They didn't quit, and this is something that they can look back on as something that is positive in a loss for Rutgers.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tony. 35-3, you've got complete command of the game in the second half, and it's just a matter of what the final score is going to be and how many young guys are going to get to play. Well, they came out and had the ball to start the second half and had a holding penalty on the first drive, and that kind of knocked them off rhythm. Then Rutgers drove and scored, and then you had a couple negative plays on the second possession, and again, you're behind and down in distance and don't convert and don't get points either of the first two possessions. And now you're kind of scratching your head like, well, is this a game or is it not a game? I can tell you that Rutgers did outscore Ohio State 28-14, I think, or no, 24-14 in the second half, and had 290 yards total offense in the second half. But as I kind of looked through the play-by-play, what I noticed was the guys making plays for Ohio State on defense, it was a mix of starters and backups from the very first Rutgers possession. So while Fields and the offense kind of stayed with the first team guys until middle of the fourth quarter, it was a conglomeration of starters and backups that played, and there were a ton of missed assignments. And obviously Rutgers used a couple trick plays, a throwback on a punt return, where I just watched the replay of that here about 10 minutes ago. 7 guys overran the play, and guys gave up on the play who were on the far side where the return man threw the pass, threw it across the field. They never come back into the screen. You're like, well, where did you guys go? And so, yeah, I'm sure the film review of that one wasn't pleasant or pretty. You had a lot of frontline guys out there. It appeared Chris Olave, perhaps, Tuff Borland, and some of the key guys, second-team guys on defense were out there too, that you'd think you guys with some experience that you'd think would make a play, but nobody did. And so it turned out to be a little bit more of a quote-unquote competitive game than people may have thought, but at the same time, they were up 35-3 and had done a ton of positive things in the first half to slam the door on Rutgers. So I guess we can be happy that they played a great first half and just kind of scratch your head a little bit puzzled about the way the second half went.
I was looking at some numbers for our weekly Tail of the Tape piece for Maryland that'll run later this week, and you knew 2020 was going to be a bit of an odd year. You don't have the warm-up games against non-conference teams, those bye games against the directional trade schools or whatnot. So you're thrust right into conference play. But I was looking at everybody circles 2018 as kind of being that one anomaly in terms of what Ohio State defense could be, should be, and wasn't. And when I look at 2018, and I've got the stats right here, in terms of second half points in the first 3 games, and you can look at it one of 2 different ways. You can either look at it as Ohio State's first 3 games truly, which was Oregon State, Rutgers, and TCU, or Ohio State's first 3 games that were Big Ten games, which was Rutgers, Penn State, and Indiana. In 2018, Ohio State allowed 11.3 points in the second half per game to Oregon State, Rutgers, and TCU, only 7.3 points in the second half to its Big Ten foes. This year is 15.3. They've allowed 46 points in the second half in those 3 games combined, and only a couple of them were to Nebraska. It's really been Penn State and then more so Rutgers. So I agree with what Tony said in terms of, I think this Ohio State defense is more of what we've seen out of the first half defense, a defense that allowed only 89 yards to Rutgers, that only allowed 75 yards to Penn State. But you definitely want to see them start putting together more than just 2 quarters of defense at this point. And it's not so much about the yardage that I'm concerned with, allowing 250 in the second half to Penn State, 290 to Rutgers. It's the points. You don't lose because of yardage. But, there are some concerns there, but they do have to build that depth. I mean, already losing Cameron Brown for the year, you see what happens when they get hurt at a thin position. I think they're blessed at a lot of the other positions in terms of the front 7 that they've got some depth there. But when you look at the defensive line, and they're not necessarily generating the type of pass rush that we're used to seeing with either a Bosa or a Chase Young on the roster, they need to get some of these young pups ready to bite now.